to be honest, like it was too crazy. But it was funny because the A&R said, for Stray Kids, we love crazy. We need to hear something that's, that sounds, outside the box. Having that right mindset, even just through, not just only through failure, but even through success is the way for longevity, as a producer and as a songwriter. He sent me a J.Y. Parks track, and I just remember sitting there thinking, this is him. This is absolutely just him. One of those moments that was really special to me.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the video. Today we are very fortunate to have the prolific producer and songwriter KAIROS. He has co-written and produced songs for Twice, ITZY, Stray Kids, GOT7, SHINee, and many more. He is also developing a brand new publishing company called Decade Plus Music. If you want to follow him on Instagram, it's @TheRealKairos. And if you want to work with me, hit me up via the website link below. Let's go. Thank you for appearing on the show today. How are you doing? How's it been?
Oh man, it's been crazy. I've been good. I've been staying busy. I mentioned this earlier, but I apologize if I look very tired. I did another all-nighter, and that's kind of part of the business. That's just part of the job. Thanks for having me. I love what you are doing with your channel, and
I appreciate it
on here. Yeah,
I appreciate it, man. That's very nice of you. I really want to know personally, because I'm a huge Stray Kids fan and generally a JYP fan. Chronosaurus, I would absolutely love to know the whole writing process behind that track. What was the backwards and forwards like with JYP and whatnot? And did you get to work with 3RACHA most importantly as well?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. My team was in China at the time, and it was just one of those trips where things were just extremely dense with a lot of stress. And we were actually on like a TV show similar to American Idol, The Voice type show out there. So we've been out there for 3 months, and they had celebrity guests on there, and they invited me to be a guest, and we stayed busy, and then we were going to do our trip to Korea at the tail end of that project, and one of our schedule was to stop by JYP, and so we were going to have a camp with 3RACHA, and we were preparing for that. One of our producer songwriters, Samuel, and he started the song, and he had a lot of the ideas that was coming together at the time, and we were able to finish the demo, and it was just really just by the slimmest of times, just like getting it right at the last minute, right before we actually hopped on the plane to go to Korea. The demo, I remember, was titled Desperado, because just how desperate, we were just trying to put it all together at the last minute.
Were you writing it in like departure lounge in the airport sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm sure, it was all just part of it but we wanted to make sure that we had something to show as well as being prepared to do sessions out there. When we played the demo, we just kind of expected a lot more. I guess it was just a lot more relaxing, than anything. It was definitely different from just going from the TV environment to a setting where we're much more familiar with, and the people are great over at JYP. I can't say enough good things about just the A&Rs over there, and we have a great relationship too. So a good transition.
That's awesome to hear, man, because I'm sure everyone who's watching, and me included, massive JYP fans. So it's awesome to hear that they're really cool people, behind the scenes, as well as the awesome stuff that they're putting out into the public. So what was 3RACHA's involvement with the track? So did they come in after that point when you were in the room pitching the track to all the A&Rs?
No, you know what? They joined us right from the beginning. And awesome. So we all got just our introductions. I think that was the first time we actually met the team, and for Stray Kids, Chris and those guys. They're just they're incredible talents, and I know that the fan base could see that, just the work ethic over there, and just the integrity that they have, and just the way they create their art is something that I think, we can all say it's next level, and I appreciate that. I love that, being around that kind of environment. So walking in, it just felt like it was like home, We played several demos, but I think right after Desperado, we sat there, and it felt like it was like 30 minutes of just silence because, you know, we just all just kind of sat there and the song was over. One of the A&Rs turned over and she said, yeah, it's, we're going to take it, you know, no
Oh,
changes.
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was crazy because, to hear someone say no changes, that's a rare thing to hear, you know?
It's like seeing a unicorn or something, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, we get a lot of different types of feedback. We also, what we did was we all worked in just different ideas that came from Stray Kids, and you know, it was a process where we all got together, and it was a collaborative process. You know, we had some other ideas that we put together for the intro for the
Yeah.
album because they said they needed an intro. So
Oh, entrance, right?
entrance,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
And so that one was also done at JYP. To be honest, like it was too crazy, but it was funny because the A&R said, for Stray Kids, we love crazy. We need to hear something that's, you know, that sounds, you know, outside the box type of thing, you know. So
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, you know, what do you guys think of this? And thankfully, you know, they like the ideas, and you know, and we and yeah, and we build on those ideas. So
That's great, man. So between Chronosaurus and entrance, were there any sort of major problems or obstacles that you guys had to get over in the production and writing process? I mean, it sounded like it was chaos from the start anyway,
right.
but was there any like additional issues that you kind of had to figure out, and what did you actually do to solve the problem?
I think because it was so well received from the beginning, and sometimes the A&Rs, you know, they're very you know, gifted in that way. They know what they want when they hear it, um, and they just know how to communicate with the producers and songwriters. And so that one was just one of those cases where just everything was smooth. You know, it was just butter.
Nice.
Everything. As far as entrance, you know, that was where we did a lot of different arrangements because we started off with just unique sounds and unique rhythms. If you hear that track again, there's even some BPM changes there that goes on. So nothing's consistent.
Mm.
When it comes to music theory, sometimes when you hear a track like entrance, you have things clashing, and you might have things that might not necessarily work, you know, in a traditional sense. But overall, the way just everything came together, it was more of a feeling that we were trying to capture, and it was a tone that we're trying to set for the album. So for entrance, the way that, you know, that was more of a experimental thing that we had
It
to do.
sounds like prog rock with, or something epic with BPM changes and clashing
Oh,
notes and whatnot.
oh yeah, absolutely.
I've been listening a lot to Louder. That mad little riff that you've got going on in the verse, and then you got the developed form in the chorus, and you bring it back for V2 as well. How did you create that sound exactly, if you remember back then?
You know what? That was a sound that I couldn't run through like a MIDI. Basically, that was me taking a sound and just bending it in different ways to create and hitting certain notes. It was a sound that I had to really try to design through bending and automation and things like that. So, and that's why it sounds very raw in some sense. I even when I was working with the mixer, you know, I know that a lot of times when it comes to K-pop, we wanted to make it sound very polished. We wanted to make it sound ready for radio in a sense. This one, you know, I wanted to take that kind of somewhat of a punk rock approach, you know, where,
Nice.
you know, it has
Mess it up.
yeah,
Yeah.
it has like the imperfections, and obviously, you know, we got to make sure that it's not it has to still work with ITZY, and it has to work with the integrity of what JYP's been putting out. But yeah, there's been a lot of thought behind just even that synth that you're talking about. Yeah, it's a combination of sound design and also just different, I would say, just sounds around that's building with rhythm.
That's really interesting because I mean, I know for me, like I'm not too technical when it comes to sound design, but I like to have a preset that just works, or a VST that works just off the bat, and
Right.
then you start in a good place, and then you can start creating all the wild automation and bending stuff in and out of place. For me personally, that process already with Louder was a lot more of a collaboration and a backwards and forwards than Chronosaurus.
Oh, absolutely. I remember actually the original demo. I actually played it for JYP when I was at JYP another time, and I played it for them, but the song didn't get picked up. There was interest on that song, and and we discussed about moving it forward. But at some point it got passed, and then it got picked up again. And so there was some time in between where I was able to make some adjustments and whatnot.
Yeah, so the process, like the lifespan of that song, it got picked up, say, in January, and then got dropped, and then got repicked back up, 6 months later per se. And it's interesting how that goes on, like the pitching process with tracks, because I've had stuff that's been pitched, been put on hold, then taken off again, and then repitched again at a later date.
It's just all about patience, and
yeah.
I think
and numbers, right?
Right, and it's I know how disappointing it is to hear the A&R team passing on a song.
Yeah.
When there's been a lot of buildup and conversation about it, these songs have its place, and it might not necessarily be the initial place that we had the target or the vision for. I think as long as the producer and the songwriter believe in the song and know that that's going to be a placement, it's going to have its home at some place or some point. I mean, yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool to hear. Last year, it was a real tough period for me with the pitching and stuff, because it's just on hold, off hold, on hold, off hold, and then just nothing happens, and it's just a waiting, and you lose your mind a bit, man. Like you end up checking your inbox, like I said this the other day, like you just go crazy, just like hoping you're going to get an email that's going to be positive, and then nothing happens, and then when you don't expect it, it happens, and then it's a nice surprise, right?
Yeah, and that that you're absolutely right. That's part of the process, and I think it's definitely not meant for everybody, and I think
No.
when people expect things to happen overnight, it's that this industry is not about that, and it's definitely a process. And I'll share something that I actually did that I only shared this on another podcast, but there was a group that I really wanted to write for, and this was an absolute a goal of mine. And so what I decided to do was that I wanted to make this somehow a reality. And I know this, when it comes to manifesting things and visioning things, that's all part of just how we move, and it helps us to have more hope in the way we go through that process. Like
it's a clear goal. Yeah.
And it's very, like you said, it's very discouraging at times when when a lot of the no's, somehow we have to keep getting through these no's, and rejections. But I started to really picture this as a reality. And what I did was, on my email, I would write to myself on the header, just like you said, it's great to see these good news. What I would do is I would put on the subject that it was a placement, that you got the placement. And I would write to myself that as an A&R saying, congratulations, you got the cut. But of course, after a couple seconds, you realize, oh, that's the email that I wrote to myself. But the important thing is that, when I wake up and I see that, and for that split second, I realize that this was my reality. If I can just remember that piece of time, or the energy that I felt, and I continue to feel that way, then I really believe that those things are going to align. Several months later, I actually got an email from that A&R saying that I got the placement.
Hey,
yeah, and
that's awesome.
And it was and he said congratulations and all that stuff on the email. At the end of the day, we all trust our talents, and we know our strengths, and we know that the goals that we have in front of us, we don't just set them there just so that we can look at them. We're out there trying to reach for them.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. That sounds really cool. And something I've always thought as well, and I only learned later on in my music career, especially when doing K-pop, is being a good artist or being a good producer is like 20% of the battle.
Yeah.
It's important, but that other 80% is stuff, everything around being a good writer and producer. And it's stuff like what you're saying. It's like the mental burn of trying to get through all of it, and getting shot down constantly by A&Rs, then picked up again, then shot down. And it's just because the thing is, if you quit there and then, it doesn't matter how good you are as a songwriter, because you're not going to carry on writing any more songs because you would have quit. And that kind of overrides the ability of being a good writer. That's something I've always kind of thought.
Absolutely. Having the right mindset, and having a great perspective on just day to day how things are moving, and being really understanding the process of where you stand in the process is important.
Off the bat of that, then, if someone who's watching this video now and they're just thinking about getting into K-pop production, what would be your top 3 tips for someone who's wanting to get into K-pop?
Yeah, I mean, if they want to get into K-pop and production, I think the greatest way to really approach it is to um, really sit behind people that are doing it well. I think you mentioned this in one of your videos. Actually, it's important to understand what people are hearing. For instance, if I really like if someone asks me, hey, do you know what a good snare sounds like? And I know that there's a snare in my head that I think sounds good to me. But if I sit behind somebody that is really doing it, they're a master at really creating tone and getting the right snare sound, then I'm gonna sit there and really understand that that's what I need to try to create, the way it should come out of the speakers and the way I receive it, in my ears, and the way I perceive it. Being around people that are doing it better than you, and being around people that are constantly challenging you is a good way to start. A lot of times where it stops is when you start, you go, man, I think this is good, and someone tells you, it's not that good, and then that discouragement either make things
Yeah.
better or it makes you just quit, and my biggest thing that I say and I share with a lot of the interns too, don't let quitting be an option. And if you take that out and you eliminate that, then you're set on this journey, and you're gonna be committed to that.
You're kind of lucky to have someone tell you that doesn't sound good, because a lot of time, a lot of time in my experience, people just go quiet and just don't respond back to your pitch, and you're like just left guessing, aren't you? I found that's pretty hard. What about tip number 2 for someone who's thinking about getting into it?
I think you have to really understand a lot of different genres, and one thing I do share with people is that we have to also pay attention to our surroundings, meaning, what is going on in this world and what is really, propelling things that are on the charts, but also moving people in an emotional way. And so in the case of K-pop, I think we all know that it depends on the label, it depends on the group, it depends on when the release is and what season it is. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but I think overall, if we're more knowledgeable about the genres and what is going on, not only in the present time but how it's projecting in the future, it's going to really help us to create ahead of our time in some sense, and then hopefully that's going to get more attention or stand out.
Yeah, because that's the hard thing, isn't it? Like, general rule of thumb, if you're hearing it in the charts on Spotify already, it's potentially already 1 or 2 years old.
Yes,
so it's trying to, and I know a lot of the writers I write with, it's still trying to preempt what the next big thing is. Like there's been a big resurgence in the 80s vibe at the moment. I'd love to hear a lot more guitars back. I think a lot more rock and live stuff would be cool to come back, because I mean, we had a huge influx of it, 10, 15 years ago, but it hasn't really come back in the same way as it was back then, but means it's probably due for something soon. So what about your third tip for anyone who's wanting to get into K-pop music production?
A great third tip would be to know where you want to go. So it's essentially, if you get in a car, it doesn't matter if it's a super nice car and let's say there's a Lamborghini in front of you, you have the keys to the Lamborghini, but it really won't mean anything if you have no destination. If it's painting, then you can put all the colors and beautiful colors together and maybe even create new colors and new shades. But if you don't know what exactly you're painting, then you just have colors. As creative people, we have to really understand what we are creating and understand the direction that we're going, and we have to find ways to get there quicker too, because obviously we're in an era where things are moving very quickly. We see in K-pop just how a lot of these promotions last to anywhere from 4 to 5 weeks in average, and so things move very quickly and the next song comes out. For many of us, we want to create something that lasts, but at the same time, we have to balance with deadlines and different opinions. And so, yeah, it's really important that, we're able to know, not only how to drive, but where we're going.
So I want to take everyone back a bit, and I'd like to know how you got started in pop music and production in general.
I've always been a very big fan of K-pop. I listen to K-pop from Generation 1 K-pop, so it's back when SHINee and those
94-ish, 95, around that time. Yeah, okay.
So it's funny because I could talk about those guys and just what happened back in those days, and a lot of the A&Rs from Korea always wonder how I know these things. And I remember when I was growing up in Chicago, there there was one TV network that had Korean shows on there, and it was very it wasn't the strongest signal. Everything was very blurry, and it was but they tried, and so we had one show that came on called KAIROS Top 10, and that was, they played K-pop, and it was one of the shows that was out there. And so I would listen to it, and the best thing I can get out of it was the audio. So I would take my boombox and I would press record and just try to record the music, and that's how I would listen to K-pop. I think K-pop has always been the thing that really taught melody to me. I grew up listening to a lot of hip hop too, but in terms of melody and just how that moves emotions, and the way that can be very happy, it can be very sad, it can take you to a lot of different places, and that's K-pop is kind of where I got that from, and especially from back in those days when they had the pop, the songs from Sateji, but also incredible ballads that came out of that time. So yeah, I that kind of shaped me into what I wanted to do. I wrote a lot of music back then. I ever since I was a kid, that's something that I've always done, and I wanted to be a writer. But I also wanted to have more control in just how I shape the sounds and know how things are created. So what I decided to do was study engineering.
Okay.
And so I went to school for engineering. I went to Columbia in Chicago. I got my degree in audio arts and acoustics. Over time, like that's been part of my repertoire. That's been part of just how I can get to things a little bit quicker. That's where I started. I started in the engineering world, and then I started getting connected with different producers, and they've always voiced to me and shared their opinions on my production, just because I was engineering their work. And and I was able to build a lot of friendships through just being in the studio and helping people with their music. I had to eventually come out here, and because of a lot of the different projects that was pulling me this way, and then I got signed to Warner Chappell Music. But yeah, I wanted to go back to K-pop. Back in the day, I was in a band. I loved, we mentioned punk rock. I loved punk rock. I love pop music. I love.
Yeah, what band were you in? What sort of stuff was it? Was this around MySpace time?
MySpace time, like Pure Volume.
Awesome.
Pure Volume, MySpace.
Pure Volume, man. Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And I did a lot of, what did we play? Like I don't know if you know bands like Rufio and like
Rufio. I used to listen to them so much, man, because they're just insanely fast drum beat, wasn't it? I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, Rufio. You got like if it's punk rock, a little more of that, like the punk rock would be like NoFX, like
Lagwagon.
Yeah. But then I also was into a lot of the emo, before emo was like a term that people
Saves the Day, Get Up Kids, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Top 3 of all time. Yeah, I was into all those bands, but once I got to a professional level where with music, and just with my, just how I was building my business at that point, I wanted to go back to K-pop, because that's kind of where my root is, and that's where my foundation was.
So could I ask, when you were with Warner Chappell, you were a writer doing Western pop then, and then you decided to move over to K-pop, and you had the connections that you built doing Western pop to get into K-pop eventually?
I remember, being in a room with, will.i.am, and
Whoa.
And that time I remember, it was oh man, I have so many stories, but I mean, I remember one instance I was over there, and he had 60 songs mixed and mastered, ready to go, and he played me some of those songs, and I remember that feeling I had. I just remember thinking, just it was beyond just being blown away. It was that moment where I was thinking, like, this is the future. This is music from the future, because there's nothing like it. And I mean, I was good friends with the engineer as well, and so like these are just incredible, just goat conversation type personnel. He played these songs, and then he said that he wants to take these songs to Korea. and he
What
asked.
year was this? Sorry, man. Was this around 06, 07 ish
This
or?
was this was slightly before he started working with 21.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and so this, he had some plans in place where he was going to go over to Korea and really try to make his mark over there. And to be honest, at the time, like of course, will.i.am was he was the goat. I mean, he still is, and he was top of his game at the time, and there was no doubt that he can definitely make an impression out there. It was very interesting because I remember he came back and he didn't have much success with that catalog. In
Mm.
fact, I was told that there was actually, this is a long time ago, but the time that I heard this, I heard that there was nobody interested in those songs,
Oh,
which was
wow.
surprising, but it wasn't that surprising because what was going on back then was that K-pop was starting to become a little bit more. They're starting to find their direction, they're starting to find their identity, and so especially during that time, the door might have been a little bit more open, whereas now it's a lot more narrow and more exclusive in terms of who comes in and who impacts and influences what's on the charts and how K-pop is formed. So we hear of Dr. Luke and Max Martin, taking a team of nine producers and their own team, and they're camping out in Korea. And I remember this was recent, but they were recently there for 2 weeks,
Mm.
and and they, again, same story. They didn't sell any songs from their catalog, or from the camps that they attended.
Why do you think that is? Because I mean, I would guess it just sounds Western. I don't know. I
Right,
just assume they haven't spent the time learning K-pop and listening to enough K-pop to
right,
appreciate the intricate writing traits that K-pop possesses.
right.
So it would just sound like good Western tracks.
Right. I mean, I think it has to. I think this is the case, and we're willing to take a few steps back to make more steps forward. When you're, I think when you're
When you're at
established,
their level, yeah.
right? I don't think they're gonna say, well, I don't need to take any steps back, and I've been going
Yeah.
and I've been doing just fine. I don't think there's any reasons for me to take steps back. So it's gonna be an ego battle in some sense, and I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but I think a lot of it has to do with that because of course, when it comes to pop music, they're the godfathers. Max
Mm.
Martin. I mean, these guys have created some of the most classic music in our history. But we're talking about K-pop, and it's new music, it's new development, it's something that what's exciting about K-pop is that as it's developing, we can be a part of that. We can impact it, we can influence it. And I think the way they wanted to influence it was with the way they know how, and the way they wanted to push, when in reality K-pop has now kind of become more of its standalone genre. We've seen so many producers in Korea that found success, but also had a lot of challenging moments out there. So
Oh, definitely. I started K-pop back in 2013, but I consistently failed on and off up until 2018. After hearing Heart Shaker by Twice, and that was the
yeah,
song that really like put me back into it. And what's insane about that track, and this is actually a proven point of why the K-pop industry is so small and everyone knows everyone. But it turns out that I ended up writing with the guy who co-wrote Heart Shaker like 6 months later. So that was a really cool experience for me to go through. But yeah, I had to fail a lot. It's trying to not sound Western, trying to lose the Western sound enough to sound K-pop. So, for example,
right.
chord progressions was real hard problem for me to figure out. And
Well, I think that's what makes you a great teacher, actually, because you're willing to share the challenges. You're actually, you're willing
mm,
to talk about the failures and why things are not so easy. And I think that's what it takes really to advance in this industry because it's new. In some sense, it's like it's still developing it as we speak. And so if we approach it with a set mindset, like it's going to be this way,
mm,
and if it's not working that way, then hell with it. I don't think this is right music, or you start bashing on the genre. Then I think
yeah.
it'd be very hard for if I was to write a metal song, I've gotten into metal songs. I can't dislike metal and write the best metal song. I'm gonna have to learn to like it, and I have to figure out what makes metal so special to so many of the fans that are listening to metal. And so, I would really study it, and I would find out, the way you pick the guitar, the strings. I wanted to figure out, the amps. I would really have to invest myself and get into the sound in order for me to be great at that sound.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, what people feel, I've seen in my own first-hand experience, is people feel that they can convince huge fans of metal that they can write metal, but the fans are going to know better than you will, because they listen to it like day in, day out. And actually, I had a real story about this back when I was composing for film score. I did a horror film. I'm a huge horror fan, watch loads of it. Korean horror is a whole other subject I'd love to talk about at some point, because I watch a lot of Korean horror movies. But yeah, I ended up working with a director who was not a horror fan, but he tried to release a horror film and then try and sell it to horror fans. And lo and behold, it didn't do too well. And it ended up coming quite two-dimensional and quite linear. And there wasn't the stuff horror fans love in this horror film. You can't expect to learn something so quickly and easily and then be a master at it. That's a big thing with General Online, and what I talk about as well, and why I'm so open about failure in my own career and stuff, is that people only see the tip of the iceberg, man. They only see like the top 5% of what goes on. And like, you don't see the 95% of the work and graft that doesn't happen on the screen or in your ears and the track, And one thing I constantly have to battle with a lot in the YouTube comments is, well, not as much anymore, but used to be, people would be like, all right, you're a K-pop producer, so where are your hits, where are your cuts? And I'm like, well, I don't have any. And he goes, well, you can't call yourself that. Stop being a fraud. It's like,
No.
no, I mean, I can see why you think that. I have no results to show you, but the results are the top 5%, and you're not seeing the 95% that's going on behind that.
No, and that's absolutely true, because, and just like what you said, what people see, a lot of the fans see, are the Instagrams or, the Twitter and the things that we share. And I remember one of my A&Rs from back in the day, he would call me every day and told me to get better at social media, and I was just terrible. And I still think I am now, but he used to tell me that you have to get better at the social media game. And so, I would post things up and I would put it up there, but what people don't realize is what went behind those songs or behind those events, and there was just so many things that, people might not know about, but like you said, that 95%, I think that's what really makes the person, who they are, whether that be a K-pop producer or, an artist, or an A&R, or songwriter. So I think, absolutely, I agree with 100% what you just said.
Cool. Awesome, man. One thing I want to ask you, what was your career defining point that you always look back on?
I would say working with J.Y. Park.
Nice.
I grew up listening to him, idolizing him. I mean, he was one of my top heroes. And it was that moment when I heard his track. This was, I believe, for Susie. And the song was called Yes, No, Maybe. And they sent me a J.Y. Park track, and I just remember sitting there thinking, this is him. This is absolutely just him, and it was hard to explain, because just the bass line, the drum, certain samples that he used, everything about it was exactly what I would study, growing up, and thinking, just now I get to write on it, and it was just one of those moments that was really special to me. And it was even more special once it got cut. And it's funny because the demo for that track was called Yes, No. And then, I guess I was trying to be funny, and I wrote the song, and then I sent it back going, Yes, No, Maybe, and then the song came out to be Yes, No, Maybe. So it was just,
Hey.
I guess it just kind of made me feel like, all right, we worked together, even on the title, we combined our ideas, and it was a special moment for me just seeing that come out. So it's funny because a lot of the people I got to work with, are people that I grew up, again, just idolizing and looking up to. There are moments where I would see them in the studio, or I'll see them at different events, and I'll share with them. I said, I really studied your stuff, back in the day, and I think I just want to just say thank you and appreciate you for, for making that music, because, it allowed me to be who I am today, and, it impacted me in the way I produce and and write music and become a songwriter. So, just having those moments where I get to share those thoughts and feelings is always special.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear, man. I hope I can experience something like that soon as well. It's really cool.
Who's your hero? Who would you like to work with?
Well, JYP generally, I think just him as a person, producer, and marketer, branding. I think all of that, what he does, is really forward thinking. I got a lot of respect for that, and I feel like I am trying to do my best to do something along those lines and hopefully build upon that, which would be cool. Production wise, yeah, there's someone I'm a huge fan of. And who has shaped a lot of the way that I produce today. And he's called Tak, T-A-K. Fairly big Korean producer. He did Superhuman. Okay, I'm pretty advanced now as a producer, but still today, if he would write a song, I would sit back and go, how did he do that? Like, how did he do that? And I still, every time I hear one of his new tracks, I'm absolutely blown away by his theory, his production, his ideas, just everything he does is just unbelievable. Absolutely love it. So yeah. Regarding DPM, your publishing company, we're going to move things over this way now. What was the goal?
I'll just try to condense it as much as possible, because I want to make sure we make the most use of our time. So I'm working with a major publisher, which I cannot go public with yet. We are creating a new publishing company called Decade Plus Music. We bridge culture and clear expectations for songwriters and producers that are entering, rapidly developing territories and markets like Asia, such as K-pop, of course. And our goal is to provide better publishing solutions for, foreign writers with greater representation and transparency, because I think that is something we absolutely need. And a lot of times, when we have sub-publishers in between and we have different people, the middleman, what we are missing is the accountability. Because how many times do we pitch and never know, what is going on with our songs?
Like all the time.
All the time. So our model is built around, the writer's value and catalog through Decade Plus Music. The way we are building just within our company is that we are the bridge for these culture gaps, and we are the answer to many of these challenges that songwriters, producers, and artists face worldwide. I've seen it evolve just from Generation 1 K-pop to just how now we're seeing, 4 million plus in pre-sales alone with BTS, and then, we see the Billboard numbers and things are really taking off. And so it's a very interesting time. I mean, this, we all know this, that, not too long ago, if you wanted to write for Justin Bieber or Taylor Swift, these camps are very small. They're very exclusive. And to get these type of cuts, you have to be a part of a very small group and somehow get in. Whereas now, and before, K-pop allowed to reach these type of numbers just through different mediums. A lot of times we deal with sub-publishers and people that, want to maximize or sometimes, unfortunately, take advantage of writers. And so, what we do is that we want to provide that transparency and really help writers not only get these placements, but to help them succeed and find a career worldwide in that sense.
That's awesome. And what's the current situation at the moment when you guys going live? Are you looking to work with new people and writers and whatnot?
So right now, we have writers that we have in mind and we have currently on the roster. We would like to evolve and we would like to grow on that number more so towards the end of the year, and hopefully by next year, we will really start finalizing a lot of these pending deals, because what's been happening is that we're actually getting a lot of submissions. We're getting a lot of calls and emails from writers that are very interested in reaching out to K-pop or just Asia in general through Decade Plus Music. This trust factor, it's because of this transparency and our relationship that that we have, and we genuinely care. We care about the writers because I'm a writer myself, and so, if I had a publishing background and I came strictly from that, then it's easy. It's me more about saying, well, you have these cuts, I'll take half, and all the promises that I said before, well, we can talk about that later. That's essentially, a publisher
Mm.
approach. So they can tell you, I'll get you in a room with so and so, I'll get you in a room with Justin Bieber. But at the end of the day, what's their real intention? And if it's really more about taking half of your publishing, then that's where the issue is. And so for us, we want to make sure that it's the writers first, and we want to find a better publishing solution for these situations so that the writers are thriving. We have a good handful of people that we want to sign on top of the current roster, but we would like to eventually sign a lot more by next year.
We're going to start reading your questions now. What do you do when you feel stuck with your songwriting process, i.e. cannot finish the song?
Try to change my environment. I like to try to find a new inspiration that kind of sparks something. Maybe I just need to be around different types of energy. And so what I like to do is I like to try to remove myself from the studio. Sometimes I write some of my best songs just driving or being in the shower, and I might need to just kind of get out of that bubble in a sense. And I think because of Corona and because of everything going on these days, I think this question is very relevant. And for me, I try to create a new environment, blue lights, up there, and sometimes lights help, and just different ways where I can get myself in a different zone.
How much do you practice per day, and what does your practice look like?
The way I practice is interesting because I'm able to do vocals myself. The time where I'm recording and I'm trying to figure out, how to deliver certain notes, I really practice trying to get better. Just all these little things that I can add to my overall strengths is going to help me get closer to the picture that I have in my head. So I might practice singing. I might practice, with my instruments so that I can get better at guitar. I can tell you right now, like my guitar playing has gotten so much worse over the years. I used to shred when I was in.
I'm the same, man. I'm the same.
Yeah.
I barely pick up a guitar these days. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so I can't believe it because I used to really shred during high school. But I think it's because I'm trying to get better at other things too. And I think in this industry, it's going to really help you if you learn other things. And I'll give one example of that. Even as a sound engineer, you can't just be an engineer. It really helps if you can make the coffee. If you make coffee well, or it really helps if you can make a website. All these things are going to help you just get a little bit ahead. And I think this is the kind of mindset that I like to practice.
Yeah, funny enough about coffee, I used to work in Starbucks for most of my 20s supporting my music career. When I was in a band and we ended up going to quite a big studio here in the UK, I was often asked to make the coffee for everyone because I worked at Starbucks. And you just think, I do this like day to day. Why am I going to do it more in my free time? So yeah, so coffee is definitely a big popular thing in studios.
But they remember you.
Yeah, they remember me. Yeah. So what are your tips in writing a K-pop pre-chorus?
I love pre-choruses. I actually write the pre-chorus as the chorus. And what I try to do is I try to beat that. A lot of times when you hear my song, in most cases, when you hear my pre-chorus, it was either supposed to be the chorus and I ended up beating it. And so something else went on as to become the chorus itself. But in the case where the chorus, pre-chorus breaks down, sometimes, you might move the bridge over to the pre, or you might, try to change the mood or the energy of the pre. And so it really depends on the track. But yeah, I do approach it as if every part of the song has to be a hook. As we all know in K-pop, we need to make sure that each section will bring the listener in and hook them in some way.
This one is from G Lin, and they would like to know, what if I was a good songwriter or producer and I produced a beat? How would I reach the company or artist and show to him my project and idea? Because the majority of companies or artists establish connection links, but they do not respond when you communicate with them.
My advice is that you have to keep trying, because for me, one thing that I see is that when people submit demos, I might not be in that right, setting to listen to that in that moment. But if the demo comes at another time where I'm actually listening through some, if I'm going through emails or if I'm going through, different type of notes, and I see there's some demos that I can listen to, that might be a better setting that I can, hear and respond. And so I'm not saying go out and harass people, because that's definitely a way to get a big fat no. But I think it's also important that, to show respect, keeping things short, and to be persistent in a way where you're going to get a response. This goes for a lot of things, not just for producers, but publishers and and different personnel in music.
All right, this one's from Haley. What is some things you do differently than other producers? What makes you stand out?
Well, I talk about taste because sound selection is a major part of production. One of my favorite plugins is called the Decapitator by Soundtoys.
Oh yeah.
I use that to shape my tone and make my sound stand out a little more, especially on the low mids. I think it's great for that. So understanding plugins, but I always say this. I said that I tell people that the equipment is only good as the people behind it. It's not so much about the plugins or the equipment. It really comes down to how you use it and how good you are at these different tools. As an example, I use a Decapitator to really shape and design my tone. But yeah, just different ways like that, I think really helps you know your signature sound, and whatever that is. I talk about taste a lot also because, that's essentially what people are paying you for, right? It's they're paying money to get your taste, to buy your taste and to hear your taste. And so it's important that we develop that as early as possible.
From Charlie Doan, what do your routine producing songwriting sessions look like? Are you able to come up with ideas on the spot, or do you need to have some inspiration before entering a session?
I don't necessarily have a routine, but I do prepare a game plan. Or a creative approach to a creative approach for different artists. In terms of coming up with ideas on the spot, well, if you're not good at this, I don't think you're ready to be in a writing session or a studio, because this is a very big part of writing, and especially doing on a level where A&Rs get involved, management gets involved. And a typical session, I would walk into the studio, and meet many people for the first time, including A&Rs, managers, studio staff, and sometimes artists. Once we decide on a track, I would walk into a booth and they press record, and everyone will look at you and expect something amazing, to come out. And as a professional, we have to be ready to go and deliver every time. And because there's no such thing as, can I get a minute here? And, obviously that's just real life. And, so there's no exact routine per se, but I think it's important that we do our research and we understand what kind of environment we're going to walk into, and really expect as the different things to come up, and be ready to excel in those things. When it comes to studio time, I mean, it's not cheap. So time is an important factor, and we can't waste it. And so we have to really try to create in that type of pressure.
All right, so this one is from My Turtle is on Fire. First of all, KAIROS, I'm a huge fan of your work. I've been following your career for quite some time, and you keep surprising me. Love it so much. Heart emoji. That's a nice start, right? Are there any songs that you think are perfect or close to perfect? What do you think makes a perfect song? I seriously love your work, and I can't wait for this interview.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And, the fans, I don't think they realize how much it means when, we hear feedback like that, and it really keeps us going, and it really inspires us. So thank you so much for that. A perfect song, I think it really depends on timing. It's almost like, let's say, you try to do a perfect interview, and you try to do an interview with someone that just didn't have lunch yet. They might not be in the best mood, and you're doing your best and you gave your best interview ever, but the person that's receiving that information might not necessarily be in the right mood to have a back and forth conversation. But if you catch them in the afternoon, when they're fed and they're happy and they're rested, they might be a little bit more responsive. They might share their thoughts more in a positive way, to just being more encouraging. Yeah, perfect music. I don't think that is something that necessarily exists. But if there is perfect music to you, or to the listener, I think it's important that that those things resonate just through our feedback, just like how this listener has shared, and just their thoughts and their encouragement. So I appreciate that. Thank you for the question.
So this one is from Breeze. What do you think about music engineering? Do you think it is really worth studying as a university degree?
I think it would be great to study engineering. Obviously, with just how how things are now, just how everything is on YouTube, and you can really just learn things on the internet. It's really hard to find a place like in school, for instance. I think it's, people ask, like, is it something that's important for my growth, and is it important for my career for me to go to school and get the education? My answer is that it's not necessary. But I think what school does provide is networking opportunities. And I think early on, if you're able to build friendships, and if you're able to build and if you're able to learn just an environment of what you can expect going into the real world, those are all advantageous to just how you can approach the industry. So there's definitely advantages, but I don't think it's a necessity to go through school. For myself, I did go through school, but I learned a lot outside of school, and that's really what shaped me to be who I am. It's not necessarily the professors that that taught me physics of sound and audio acoustics, but all those things do matter in some way. But it's not a major part of your career path.
I would have to agree with that. I think the learning curve from when you leave school to end goal is massive. I would look at school, for me personally, I would look at it as like, you want to walk north, but you're facing west. And what school does is it just points you in the right direction, but you've got to do the walking to get to that point.
Absolutely. Exactly. That's a great way.
Thanks, man. I totally agree with you, basically. Yeah. Kairos, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really, really appreciate it. There's been so much good information and stories on this video. It's been absolutely amazing. Where, if people want to find you online, where should they find you?
I'm on Instagram and Twitter at The Real KAIROS. And so a lot of things will be announced through those the social medias. And so please check it out. I mentioned before, but yeah, I can't announce a lot of the upcoming releases, but the labels obviously don't like when we reveal information. They do, but yeah, however, you can check all the updates on my Instagram and Twitter.
What about your podcast as well? You've got as well.
Yes, we have a podcast called The Loud Snackers, and we just eat a bunch of snacks and just talk a lot of nonsense. So you guys can check out Loud Snackers on Instagram and Twitter as well. I believe it's on Instagram and YouTube, and also we're on Apple Music and Spotify.
Awesome. I'll put links in the description box below for everyone to check out. Kairos, thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you.